in all of the different types of conversations we've had, what we've landed on, and where we've felt the most comfortable, and where we've seen the common thread is around a statement, and that statement is basically story is king. Okay, so here we are, in a different mode, in a different form.
Dude, stop trying to underplay it. This is sick.
I mean,
used to just be a
yeah.
mobile phone,
100%.
audio only,
100%.
no mics,
Sometimes no video.
no video.
Actually, that's a good point. When you put it that way. Oh yeah. I mean, I still remember I still remember because it was literally X months ago, right? Oh wow. You've got the what's the thing that Apple brought out? So you can use your phone. It's called like continuity camera.
Yeah.
So on your Mac, you can use your phone, and then I was like, wow, now we've got very, very nice 1080p as opposed to like the normal Mac camera.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we're moving forward. But I think the super interesting thing is that we're moving forward with how we express ourselves, and and in the process of trying to express ourselves, we have been finding out more and more who we are, what we do, and I guess, if you want to put it that way, what's our relevance to the world? But more importantly, I think how what we do becomes very, very much aligned with what we've been doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Full circle almost.
Yeah. Well, it's also like, I think, although at the core, I think what we're doing, there's been a thread.
Yeah.
Which has remained constant. It's grown up over time.
Yeah.
It's evolved.
Yeah.
And so every now and again, you got to rethink and say, well, I'm still speaking about who I was 5 years ago in the same way.
Yeah.
Not recognizing the growth.
Yeah.
And honestly, sometimes you're having to revisit and say, I used to say I was about X, Y, and Z. Am I still really about that? Right? So to me, I can see massive, but possibly subtle from the outside, evolution, which I think we'll get more into, around just how we view ourselves and what we're for.
Yeah.
And then also like, how do we express that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
exactly.
This is great.
So we started off like with reframed, right? And reframed, what was the purpose of reframed? Reframed was as we were we started off with Pasta Mustard actually. Yeah. We started with Pasta Mustard, and Pasta Mustard was just it was quippy, it was funny. It was like, how can we find a name? Obviously, we've rebranded to Mustard. How can we find a name for a podcast? Like many of the podcasts are not. I don't want to say they're not serious, but it was the pandemic.
Yeah.
Everyone and their dog was doing a podcast.
Yeah.
And it was normally like Gus at home podcast or something, right?
Yeah.
So we had Pasta Mustard, and as we spoke and did things around Pasta Mustard, I think what I found was two things. One, when you would ask questions as you do in fantastic ways, and also as I was speaking to other people, as we were, setting up who we are as at that point venture builders or this venture agency, and as we were trying to build ventures, we just gathered that, or I just gathered that a lot of times people would ask us, and even the team then, people would ask me questions, and I spent most of my time not answering the questions, but it's literally saying you're asking the wrong question.
Yeah.
Right? So in essence, I found that, and somebody said it, like, you're just reframing everything that I'm, or a lot of things I'm asking. So it was like actually reframed, right? And what it was is like, so it was, now then we called it reframed, and it was we're essentially trying to change kind of like the general thinking or how we perceive and how we think about ventures, brands, and initiatives, right? Because it wasn't just limited to brands or to storytelling or otherwise, it was literally broad. So we moved to reframe, right? And what was wrong with reframe, I guess?
I don't think there was anything wrong with it.
Yeah.
But I think it was, look, within that, reframed series, there was quite a large range of topics we were looking at, right? Sometimes we'd look at reframing
True.
an idea that was inspired by something we had read.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody posts something on LinkedIn, it's provocative, or at least we think it's provocative, it provokes an idea. And then we discuss that and see how it relates to what we're doing. But also we got quite macro, right? Like we then reframed, interviewed, and spoke about quite macro kind of economic themes. Exactly. Exactly. But I think it didn't necessarily, and I think this is the case with most of our series and ways of communicating. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that's static forever, right? If we feel that something's run its course or it's completed an evolution and we think there's a different direction, and I think we go for it.
Yeah, I mean, so interestingly, I almost put it like this, right? And the thing is, I don't find myself to be this, but maybe I am that, right? It feels like it's so. When one's trying to express themselves, right? We've always got this fundamental thing of what we're about, right? And what we're about, I think, doesn't change, but what happens is we have loads and loads of influences, right? And I think that's exactly what Reframe was, right? We kind of distilled down and said, okay, well, clearly we keep reframing these questions that people ask us because we have a way of thinking in around brands, around ventures, around initiatives. So it's like, let's do Reframe. And then after that, actually, are we reframing things in macroeconomics as we felt comfortable doing that? We're reframing things in venture capital or what have you, and just having broad discussions. And actually what happened is we had this group of people who really liked our podcast, but they would ask, a couple of them I spoke to, and they would say what is the podcast fundamentally?
Yeah.
Right. And so just going to your point about doing different things and changing, I don't know if it was us changing. I mean, it looks like that, and I think probably it is that, but it's I think it was us getting closer, so trying and iterating and getting closer to our core and what our core is. And I think our core hasn't changed. I just think that it's very, very hard to stay centered. It's much easier to basically be drawn and dragged to and fro because obviously everyone in your space and your thing is doing something, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was what are we doing? So over the last, I would say in particular, I think the start of this year has been, end of last year, start of this year has been crazy. And as part of the craziness, if you think about it, well, actually, it's not even actually from summer 2023. Part of the craziness was that we, as seemingly this company that builds other ventures and has got an investment vehicle to enable us to do that, we suddenly hire somebody we call a creative lead, an audience lead, and we basically start saying we want to make films or video content. So usually you'd go and you would, you'd make your own things, you'd hire something outside, hire someone outside to make some videos, and then after, what's the purpose of the videos? Hey, we want to do some social media stuff or otherwise. But we went and said, again, it's another form of expression. And we started digging deep into that. And in essence, I think what we saw is, as we were doing more things with Reframed, and then we started pushing out video content, we started seeing individuals and people in the audience interact with that.
Yeah.
And as they interacted with it, we thought it seemed to be taking us in a direction. Sort of positive interactions came around certain types of content. So in particular, to be honest, it was Africa, VC, anything that was kind of positive, almost in the Africa rising narrative, if I could say it that way. And we just felt that's not what we were trying to do.
Also, the Africa rising narrative is played out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say we went down that route, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think bringing it down to the amen before we go back up, right, is over the last 6 to 8 months, as we've pushed out content, as we've built things,
Yeah.
as we've brought in new team members who've become super instrumental, and as we spoke to them about who we are, and as we've spoken to our investors or new people, new investors about who we are, in all of the different types of conversations we've had, what we've landed on, and where we've felt the most comfortable, and where we've seen the common thread is around a statement, and that statement is basically story is king. And what does that mean? It basically means that everything that we've been doing since Mustard was founded, and everything we've been doing, whether it be ventures or narratives, doing kind of identities and stuff for other people, telling stories in PR, everything that all the conversations that we've had, where we've tried to reframe people, the way people ask questions and otherwise, what we've basically been saying is that what people have been focusing on is not what they should be focusing on. It's actually the story, and behind the story are passionate individuals and moving ideas, and it's basically the journey of bringing those moving ideas into some form of fruition and bring them to the world.
Okay, but so for someone who's not really familiar with this whole narrative-led approach, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of people now are starting to talk about storytelling in business and in startups. So there's two camps. One camp is, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's not that deep.
Yeah.
I know my story. I was born, I did this, I did that, now I'm doing this is why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
What's the issue?
Yeah.
It's an about page on the website. Here's the story.
Yeah.
Like, why do I really need to put that much effort behind it?
Yeah.
That's something I do naturally. Probably still some people thinking that way.
Yeah.
And then others who are thinking, yeah, I'm just going on LinkedIn, right? Like every PR comms person that's forward thinking in Silicon Valley right now is suddenly a storytelling expert and selling services around storytelling as a service, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's also a little bit like, I think that's the cottage industry starting to come up. So to the uninitiated, what do we mean when we're talking about, speak to those two groups, like this group here that doesn't understand why story is so important, and also like, what does it even mean? Like, how do you incorporate story into like, give me an example of why this is so important. Also, how's this gonna help me grow the company?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then also, how is it different to a bog standard off the shelf PR service?
Yeah. Yeah.
LinkedIn cold outreach vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What does it mean to us?
I think the simplest way, so at one, I think that is the question to ask, because everyone's talking about narrative, right? And I think the simple thing I want to say, and the thing I feel most comfortable saying, is this: we're going to find out how powerful stories are, and we're going to find out how to bring them to the foreground, right? And that's what we're about right now, right? So we're not a PR agency. I think that when you talk about storytelling in PR and you talk about storytelling in the agency world, and we're gonna sit down with guys from communications. We know loads of people there. We know people who have founded their firms. We're gonna talk to them. But I find that often when somebody's talking, hey, storytelling is very important to your business. Your business already exists. Your business already done some revenue, which is why you can hire that person who's talking about storytelling, and your business already has a product or service. And so in essence, what you're doing is you're at best retrofitting a style of marketing to an existing product or company brand that you must sell. So you're very locked in, right? There are, you might be so fortunate you've got wide parameters, but really, there are these guardrails you can't go outside of. And we've tried that as an agency, and you know what? It just hasn't worked for us. Yeah. Because there's only so much we can do. And I think when you're talking about the other person who says, hey, look, what I need to do is raise capital, we'll make an about page, right? Don't worry, we'll do that. Actually, I've got someone drafting that into work. Right?
Yeah.
I think to those people in general, I think what happens is, they say the product, right? What's the USP? What is the, the NBA stuff, what's the USP, what's this and that? And the honest truth is, like, I've always said, there's nothing new under the sun. Like, I came from engineering.
Yeah.
I really think there's nothing new under the sun. I think at best, the new things that occur, or the things that the consumer sees as new, and even I would say the B2B consumer, that the business sees as new, is normally, it sits on the front end. It's how you communicate the data, or the information that you have on your software app, right? Or if it's a trainer, it's how you communicate in terms of the colors you use and otherwise, right? And all of that, right? We can, hey, let's use purple because that's a good color for this, or red because, but really all of that is, again, an expression of the story. And the question is, what story? Well, let's go all the way back when you founded a company, right? When you have nothing, absolutely nothing. We're raising, or you know what? Fine, we don't do VC, but I need somebody, because I can't afford them, I need somebody who's going to help me build the product.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I know, doesn't my nephew do something in computer science or otherwise, or doesn't he do industrial design? What are you going to tell him to make him or her believe that they should give you an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours of their time per week to build this thing, right? That's the story, that's the sell, that is the reason why. And I guess that's what we mean. But what we're saying now with Story is King, and what we're trying to do, what the quest we've been going on is, how do we express a story which starts off with a super passionate individual, a stupidly passionate individual, and an idea that moves him or her? How do we remove all guardrails, have a blank sheet of paper, and express that in as pure a form as possible for, let me just put it out, for maximum commercial advantage?
Yeah. So sometimes the corollary is easier to make the point, right? So as opposed to this passionate individual that's moved kind of beyond sense and reason, right? So that's the target, right? Those are the people we're looking to engage, and I think we're people like that. As opposed to, I guess, not that there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah.
But somebody who just says, I want to start a business.
Yeah.
Needs to be commercial. There's demand.
Yeah.
There's a supply issue. There's a logistics problem. This is the team I need. Let me pull it together and do it. Nothing wrong with that, right?
Nothing
and
wrong.
Actually, most businesses should do that. Most entrepreneurs should do that.
100%.
Find a need, fill it.
Yeah.
For less than it costs you to sell.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're talking about.
Nope.
So what's different between those two founders?
What's different between the founders we're looking for and the founders that
let's call it the passion-driven founder with a story that moves them.
Yeah.
And let's say the pragmatic entrepreneur
100%.
looking to fill a gap in the market purely.
What's the difference? The difference is,
as it plays out.
Yeah. The difference is 99% of the commercial enabling world is geared towards the pragmatic founder. And it feels like 1% is geared towards the storyteller.
Yeah.
And so we understand, right? Because look, all this vision, whiz bang, cloud in the sky, like most of it, let's be honest, is going to be an idea that somebody has. This fad. I had a fad when I was 15 or something with American football, because the new Madden game came out. It'll pass. Let's just make sure he doesn't spend too much money on a Tom Brady top or very expensive American football memorabilia, right? But so a lot of it, I know, history and time has told us that it's gonna pass, that it's quite irrelevant, that it's not grounded. But actually, I think if we really look at history, the big arc of history, right? history is basically made up of individuals who we now see, especially if they've gone and they're past, we see them as larger than life. Right? There aren't that many individuals, compared to how many people have lived on Earth, there aren't that many individuals, but we see them as massive, larger than life. And these people were people who stupidly, irreverently, and against the odds, saw something that they believed that most other people, 99% plus, could not see. And they bullishly, stubbornly, and history has shown us successfully, went to go and do something that literally made them in the Hall of Fame of history. You know, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, fill in the blanks, right?
Adam Newman.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he's on. Let's just say, I don't know if he's on the same.
No. But this is the point I'm making, right?
100%.
So that's another distinction I want to draw.
Yeah.
Is or how do you think through that, right? Because it's one thing to be. I feel like for the last 5-10 years in startup land, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is basically Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
There's been this deification of founders, right?
Yeah.
And the more insane your idea is, and the more outrageous it is, seemingly the more money that you get, right? Irrespective of whether that outcome is positive, net, right? Sure, land grab, lots of customers, the VC musical chairs does what it does.
Yeah.
Like most Ponzi schemes.
Yeah.
Certain people make money and most people lose out, right?
Yeah.
So how do you distinguish then between the passion-driven founder that we want to promote versus the charlatan?
Yeah. Easy.
Are we going to get sued for this because of some video?
Easy. Yeah. Easy. Look.
Views on my own.
So funnily enough, right? You remember I said this, and I'm going to go back to this because just before we started filming this, right? What did I say? I basically said, I never trust a founder that's brought to me. Like I have high skepticism of anyone that, hey, you know what? You're trying to find a founder thing? Yeah, this guy. And I'm just like, I'm going to meet the guy. Yeah. But in my mind, off the bat, it's no. Yeah. Right? And it's simple. How you differentiate them is the story. And I think what you don't do is, because you just said VC and you've called it a Ponzi scheme, right? Allegedly, right? But essentially, right? I think what big time VC or storied VC and is trying to do, I think they're trying to, as always, they're trying to pattern match coldly and without human insights, without human agency, without human whatever. They're trying to pattern match to try and capture Alexander the Great. You can't pattern match for Alexander the Great.
Especially not when everybody's read Alexander the Great's story and then tries to shoehorn their story into an Alexander the Great template. Because then the greatest storyteller is not necessarily the best entrepreneur, necessarily, right? But maybe the best entrepreneur is usually a phenomenal storyteller.
Yeah.
So that's the issue is...
Yeah. But also, it's just the thing is like, I mean, it's literally 2020 hindsight. Like everyone's got 2020 hindsight, right? If everyone went back, several years ago, right? I mean, millennia ago, everyone would say, yeah, I noticed Alexander the Great could do what he was, right? I mean, if everyone went back, I mean, being slightly contentious for a moment, Adolf Hitler was a failed art student. If everyone went back and they saw the failed art student, right? Everyone now with history would say, he's going to become Hitler. How do you know? These are people who, I mean, how many people, like we're talking about good and bad, how many of these people are there really in the world, like in history? And even if we talk about Silicon Valley, right? Maybe good and bad as well, So
Yeah.
your Jack Ma's and your Elizabeth
Homes.
right? How many of these people are there? From all the people who start up successfully, unsuccessfully, even those who are reported in the media, who this number of people raised each year. How many of them really rise to the top of the press, of the news cycle, for a good or bad reason?
Very, minuscule.
Absolutely minuscule.
Statistically insignificant.
Yeah. So I think the thing is we obviously we want to, and this is what happens, and I think this is some of the stuff that's happened with us and we've been fighting against, which is people say you're making content, or people say you're a venture builder. Why are you making content? Right? You're a venture builder. Why do you have a creative lead? You're a venture builder. Why are you not sticking to an industry? You're a venture builder. Why are you not, fill in the blanks, right? And I guess it's that, okay, you've made content and this seems to work. Why not push that? That's what the PR guy on LinkedIn will say. Why not double down on that content? But what if that content doesn't sit well with you? What if that content is not the vision that you had, right? What if the vision that you had is something completely different, right? What if the vision you had is something that there's nothing new under the sun, but it's a juxtaposition of a couple of things that are normally a little bit weird, right? Or normally independent, right? Should that make you stop, or should that make you say, hey, let's just go around the corner a bit and let's see if this road actually leads to somewhere interesting? And I think all we've done at Mustard is say, let's just try it. Let's go down and let's see if this resonates.
Yeah.
And the powerful thing, it's almost like a maths equation. When you're doing a proper proof, the great thing is it can be super, super messy as you're going through, but you've got it right when they balance and you have simple elegance, right? And similarly with us, as we've gone down the path, we've actually gone and found out, like, this, as you said, evolving identity, it actually wasn't an evolution. It was actually us going, like, we feel and kind of know it's right because it then validates the stuff that we did over a decade ago.
Yeah. Okay, so story is king. What does that mean for where we are now?
So what it means, what story is king was interesting. It was a big thing. It was like, how can we encapsulate, like, almost everything about us, basically everything about us, in a phrase? And I know that someone will say, okay, marketing, you do, okay, Red Bull gives you wings and otherwise, but it was never my intention to do that. I was always happy with being verbose, as you know.
Yeah.
But like, as we were moving along and moving across, I just found that actually as you move along and you experiment with what you're doing, you get to know yourself more. You're able to distill yourself down and distill, in this case, a company down into a phrase, or as I've always said with Coca-Cola, I was speaking to somebody from Coca-Cola not too long ago, a sound, right?
Yeah.
Right? And then a concept, summer's day, happiness, etc. And I think I just found over time that the distillation that I thought had already been done, it hadn't yet been done. It'd gone quite far because through conversations, like one-to-one conversations that we'd had, maybe thousands or at least hundreds over the years. But then after, there's that thing of when you put it out into the wild and you express it in the wild, and then the average person who doesn't know you, doesn't know your team, hasn't interacted and got some preamble, just goes like that. And I think then you they interact, and you start to kind of gather what, hopefully you converge on things that are kind of prevalent about you. So story is king, which is really funny because we came and converged on that. And then, in essence, I then Googled Story is King. And I came up with a quote from Ed Catmull, who is the co-founder of Pixar alongside Steve Jobs when he was in his wilderness days. And he'd left Apple, or been ousted by Apple and went to Next. And he ended up buying Pixar, I believe, off of Lucasfilm. But anyway, in essence, there's a quote, and what in essence, I paraphrase, Ed Catmull said is, we've been saying story is king, story is king. And then they've been saying it so much, and this is probably in the, well, let's say between the 80s, 90s, etc., that other people started picking up that phrase, especially in the film industry, and maybe elsewhere. But then what he found out is that even though they picked it up and they would say it, nobody ever really lived it. And so that is the competitive advantage. And I think it rang so true with what, even this conversation, everything that we've been saying, like we say narratives. Loads of people say narratives.
Yeah.
Narrative that, I mean, there's probably not been, as you said, there's pretty much two camps. There's somebody who says narrative that, whatever, let's be pragmatic. But like a lot of people love the notion and the idea of narratives, and yeah, let's do a narrative-led approach. But then after the rubber hits the road, and maybe we work with them as clients, or we had worked with them as clients, or otherwise, and we find out that actually no, in practice they want to be pragmatic, and that's like most people.
Yeah.
So for us, Story is King was now us really elevating that narrative, that story, that central thing that we're all about, and in our phrase, making it the center, right? And what's weird about that is once we did that, it caused us to now think about everything we're doing in Mustard differently. And the weird thing, I think probably the weirdest thing, is we then looked at the targets that we had for a quarter. To be honest, this quarter just passed, right? And the target we had for the quarter in the space of audience, which is basically that's our catch-all for audience work and the content that we build for Mustard, the content we build for Ventures and otherwise. But the targets we had in Ventures was, for want of a better word, build Ventures, right? But the targets we had for audience was grow an audience, right? And it's like, grow an audience.
Get one.
Yeah, get one, basically, right? And it's like, get one with what?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, for me, it was kind of like saying, target for Ventures, get customers. With what, right? Is it, let's get customers at any cost? All right, cool. Like, then after what happens, we become pragmatic. Okay, we want customers. Why do we want customers? We want money. So how do we get as many people to buy something and give us lots of money? Well, I know what. Let's find a large industry. Let's find a trending product. Let's use social media to actually confirm this thing's trending. And then let's make that. And then let's get somebody who knows how to do operations and get him to run and build that. But that's like, compared to Story is King, that's anathema. Right? That's the complete opposite of that. So we then had to change and say, if our goals in venture is build ventures, then our goal in audience has to be build content, right? And then the question becomes, just like in ventures, what ventures? And then it's, well, we want to build ventures with passionate people, veterans in their industry of what they do, influential people who really have themselves been living brands and understand it. And then we want those guys who have ideas that move them and move us. We want to build those ventures. And so now then it comes to audience and content, well, it's going to be individuals again who are super passionate about something, who have moving ideas and have maybe lived out those moving ideas, and they've kind of grown into something. Well, we want to build content around that and with those people.
Yeah.
Right?
So to me, the difference between every narrative-led business building approach is when I see it out there, narrative-led, it's a methodology
Yeah.
or a feature. Whereas with us, it's an organizing principle
100%.
in the sense that the most fundamental decisions we make, even about what we're going to work on, who we're going to work with,
100%.
story is king.
100%.
And this is why saying it out there, it might sound, okay, yeah, fine, narrative-led. But who's willing to put that at the very core and foundation of everything and then organize absolutely everything around it?
Yeah. Yeah.
We might be the only people crazy enough to try.
Well, one of the very few.
One of the very few.
Yeah.
In our space in particular.
Yeah.
But it's so much more exciting.
100%. 100%.
And I think the thesis will be borne out. And I think that's the difference between us and every other narrative-led venture builder or entrepreneur or PR agency or comms agency, right? It's not adding on to something, some sort of feature or service. And not every founder is going to be down for that.
Yeah.
In fact, most won't.
Yeah.
Right? Because when the rubber hits the road, it's about metrics, KPIs, next
100%.
round of venture. What's the most pragmatic approach?
Yeah.
And then we're going to really see who are the real partners for us that are like-minded.
Yeah.
But I think they'll weed themselves out
100%.
very, very early and very quickly.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And I think it literally is this chicken and egg, right? Because the biggest undertakings in history, right? I'm saying undertakings to be broad, whether it be a charity, a movement, a venture, a brand, whatever. The biggest undertakings in history all seem big because of what they did. They had the biggest products, right? They moved the most people. They were the biggest in the biggest market. They made the biggest market, right? But I think that's putting the cart before the horse, because the biggest undertakings in history were big because of the passionate people, the passionate individuals, the belief they had around that idea that was, I'm sure, stupid to many people at that point, right? So we then go, oh, well, Orville and Wilbur Wright made the aeroplane. That's their big, that's what's behind it. They made the aeroplane.
Yeah.
No, what's behind it is not the aeroplane, right? What is in front of it? What is the outcome of the aeroplane? What's behind it is Orville and Wilbur Wright, right? And their story. And that story was expressed their focus was expressing it in a manifestation of a product. Other people, their focus has been expressing it in a manifestation in content and in biographies and otherwise, right? In stories and otherwise, right? So we know that in a pragmatic world, which is what the business world and frankly the world is, that is, as somebody said to me the other day, vibe for stories doesn't keep you warm at night, right? And I think it's for us to prove that it does. And we can't afford, with the things that we're saying, we can't afford to prove it by, like when we're an agency, well, we're going to find the next Jack Ma or the next Alexander and sell to him that we're the right partners for you. And then, tweak his identity or what have you. And then after say we did that, right? No, what we need to do is we need to find Alexander and Jack Ma when all they are is a promise, a potential in maybe just the eye of their mother or their father, right? Or just a few others. Maybe they've tried to do something, they failed. And we need to see them for who they are, for their passion, for their story, for their belief, and say, no, we're not gonna wait for you to do something and then say we're the best people, we should do it. No, we're gonna do it with you. And we'll both live and die on whether this thing comes to fruition, but we'll do it with you. And so that's like you said, Story is King's not a methodology. Story is King is a philosophy. It's the center of thing. It's a belief. And it's something that needs to literally run through every single thing that we do.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to work towards, making sure to some degree it does. And the proof will be in the pudding.
Stay tuned.